Coffee, the world's greatest addiction. Starting the game at a very neat 3 ducats per, it trades up to 4.5 when Europeans figure out that coffee is good actually. Thing is, ever since Kings of Kings happened, we can bump it up by another 25% due to the Yemen mission tree. Thing is, much like all the other price change events, this makes very little sense. Why does the Brazilian coffee plantation start making 25% more money because a chap in Yemen figures out how to coffee harder? I mean, this is the general issue with price change events. Sweden or something can pop a mission increasing the price of copper, and suddenly the Congolese copper mines are 25% better, despite never meeting the Swedish or anything. But I'm not here to complain about price change events. I'm here to get you 9 ducat coffee. So how do we go about getting it? Well, before we do, standard stuff. A like on the video would be appreciated if you haven't already, and a subscription would be amazing. Playmaker continues to taunt his numerical superiority, while also saying he will learn trade if I win. So if you want to see Playmaker suffer, make sure you help that happen by hitting that sub button. Anyway, enough self-shitting, let's get into the setup. Well, first, credit where credit is due, I did not actually discover this. This was brought to my attention in my Discord by an individual under the name of Alabaget, who showed this to me, so thank you very much for bringing this to my attention. There's some fun things you can pick up with this entire build, like a workshop to counting house upgrade on a certain province, as well as 10 free production development on it, and some other small buffs depending on how far you're going to go with it. So if you get the province to say 10 tax, 20 production, 10 manpower dev, which in fairness will be a decent commitment since you need to get up to 40, well, you can get 10 free production dev to get up to 30 production too. Or 6 base get produced, as well as some of the other buffs you can pick up from this mission tree. What mission tree am I talking about? Well, as you probably guessed, I'm referring to the Yemen mission trees. I'm going to start as the Racids for this example, as I'd recommend them if you're doing this at home to be, well, the person you're doing for this run. The Racids have the majority of the Yemen version of the mission tree, as well as some extra ones over here, with the Zaid Caliphates and a couple extra small missions on the left. The main highlight, however, of this mission tree is of course going to be the port of Muka, as well as the Kava Monopoly missions. So, the way these guys work is you're going to need to complete this mission first before you can progress to the next one, and this requires you to build a workshop or counting house in this province here, get it to 20 dev, own the province, and have a shipyard or grand shipyard building it. So the shipyard requirement does kind of block you off from getting this before Tech 8, but it's not exactly the worst thing in the world. You can do this quite early is what I'm trying to allude to. Then for this mission below it, you're going to need to start getting access to a bunch of the coffee market, which is kind of part of the same requirement as the next step of getting at least 10 units of coffee produced. It's not the easiest task in the world, but quite doable, and weirdly enough this gets easier to do as you keep doing these missions, and I'll show you what I mean later. As well as getting your mercantilism to 40%. The way I'd recommend the last thing, by the way, is yes, you will need to build up your mercantilism to 40%. Whether you use a mercantilism exploit or not is up to you, but bear in mind, subjects inherit your mercantilism, which is quite convenient. See, what this mission does is it gives you a price change of coffee by 25%. Now, normally price change events, when they occur, set a flag to prevent the price change event happening again. And that's good because that means price change events can only happen once. However, mission tree price change events don't have that flag requirement, well, attached to them. And the reason is, most of the time, they occur in countries like Sweden, where Sweden has a specific mission to increase the price of copper, or something similar to that regard. Then Sweden pops that mission, and then even if Sweden gets fully conquered and then released or formed or something within that nature, that mission has already been completed, so it can't be completed again. The issue, of course, is that this mission for the Kaba Monopoly can be completed by the Racids, but it can also be completed by Yemen, who has access to the exact same mission, as well as Aden, who again has access to that mission, and of course Hadramut, which again has access to that mission, as does Mara, which again has access to this mission. Even Najran has also got access to this mission, meaning that you can pop this mission 6 times. And when you include the price change event from the European coffee, what does this look like? Well, if you've been paying any attention to the thumbnail, first, the coffee boom will occur, which will increase the price of coffee by 50% until 1821. And then, after that, every time we complete this mission, which will give us access to the Secret of the Yemeni Coffee event, we'll be able to increase the price of coffee by 25%. Meaning that, of course, completing this mission 5 times gives us our 9 ducat coffee. As well as, this mission here, which upgrades the production building, and if the counting house is already present, which will be present after clicking this once, we'll upgrade it 5 more times. This means that in practice, you can set up a campaign where you play the Racids pretty normally, conquering into Arabia, going into Ethiopia, and so on and so on. Then, do it before the Aden, Hadramut, Mara cores, etc. run out, and then basically release those vassals, give them the correct provinces they need to complete those missions, and let them complete those missions, increasing the price of coffee by 25% every single time. This is obviously incredibly powerful. Not only is the coffee immediately better than cloves, which until coal makes it the best trade good, it also means that unlike coal, which goes down to 7, coffee will remain at 9, well, until the dissemination of the coffee plant, at which point it will go down to 7.7. But even then, a 7.7 is not bad, considering that you're going to have access to quite a few of these coffee provinces. And these coffee provinces are going to be worth their weight in gold, quite literally. See, if gold was a conventional trade good and wasn't coded as gold, it would be worth 40 ducats. However, the thing we need to remember with gold is, of course, production efficiency does not apply to it. And gold does not generate any trade value. So not only would this 9 ducat trade good generate 9 ducats worth of trade value, it would also generate 9 ducats worth of trade value. So assuming you have access to 100% of your trade with no trade efficiency and no production efficiency bonuses, you'll be getting 18 ducats of income from the coffee compared to 40 from the gold. Meaning that with just 123% production efficiency and 123% trade efficiency, you will be meeting the output from gold without needing to worry about the inflation from it, as well as not having to worry about any of the depletion chances. Now, 123% production efficiency sounds bad until you realize that counting houses get you a very large chunk of the way there. Furthermore, trade efficiency is probably the harder one to stack, but the thing is with trade, of course, is trade steering is on your side here, and you're going to be generating obscene amounts of trade value in the process. Furthermore, if you are doing this, consider moving your capital to the New World and, well, picking up the European colonies, as they're probably going to colonize a bunch of, well, coffee provinces, which is going to make your New World coffee plantations even more profitable. There's also technically a coffee province in India, so you can pick that up if you really care, but yeah, it's an option for you to go grab. In essence, allowing you to build up your amazing coffee empire. And again, just to make sure we're on the same page here, this is until the end of the game and can be popped 6 times. Now, if you are doing this, I do have to give you some warning. There are 2 ways of approaching this. One is where you release vassals and feed them the provinces to complete the missions. Because these missions aren't very finicky and the AI tends to complete them without too much trouble within my minimal testing, I'd say go for that method. The main complaint here is getting the 40 mercantilism, but when you release a vassal, they're going to have your mercantilism. So I'd encourage a build that includes a lot of dip annexation costs, so you can annex those vassals back quite cheaply. And of course, if you are doing this yourself, there is one mission you need to make sure you do not pop, and that is, of course, defeat the Hormuzi, as this will give you 100 trade power in the Gulf of Aden. And because this is permanent trade power till 1821, you're basically going to prevent the AI from ever completing that mission, as they will need to get a decent chunk of trade power inside the Gulf just to complete their missions. So make sure that you are ready to give your vassals the provinces they need to get the trade power, as well as the provinces they need to pop this event. There's some quite powerful buffs as well to pick up from those mission tree. Another example is, of course, expanding the Port of Aden, which requires a bit more setup in terms of what you can do to the subjects, but it is entirely doable, which allows you to get a stock exchange on the Port of Aden, which is this province here, relatively early, as well as getting plus 10 local trade power until the end of the game, as well as some local center of trade upgrade cost. Unfortunately, there is a slight flaw with this. It does only apply once, so there's no much point getting it multiple times, unless, of course, you want to get the base tax, base production from it. The same can be said for Taze, which everyone has access to building up the City of the Monarchs, which lets you initially upgrade the tax building from a church to a cathedral. You should build a church when you do it once, and then let the AI do it 5 more times to gain 10 tax just for free. The Yeti tax income doesn't double, unfortunately. And you know, this mission here also just gives development in Taze just to really rub in how insanely strong this can be as a build. But yeah, if you haven't given a campaign in this area a go, definitely give it a go. And this is one of the more interesting builds you can get away with doing if you're feeling up for the challenge. It's not that bad. I've done worse modifier stacking runs, but it's incredibly powerful. At the end of the day, 9 ducat coffee is a hell of a drug. Anyway, that is all I have time for today. A big thank you to all the people that support me over at Ko-Fi, with a special thank you to Ark and Solar.